What's the most satisfying revenge you've experienced? This kid picked on me since first grade. Then one day in 4th grade, the teacher had her back turned, so he climbed under my table and started pulling faces at me. Not sure why, he was kinda weird. It must have been a knee-jerk reaction, but his face was there and my foot was here, so I kicked him in the face. Kid falls to ground shrieking while clutching his head. Teacher turns around and sees him out of his desk, gives him detention. Later that day, his face had swollen to the size of a volleyball, and he had stopped crying long enough to tell the teacher what had happened. My teacher asked me if it was true, and I said I felt something tugging on my shoe, so I kicked, thinking it was caught on something. The teacher gave me a lollipop, saying be aware of my surroundings next time. The kid never bothered me again. Best day ever. When I was a young chap, around 6, my brother stole my Game Boy Color and deleted my saved Pokemon games. I worked super hard for the amount of Pokemon I had caught and was quite furious. I later grabbed a butcher knife from the kitchen when my parents weren't home and chased him around the house until he locked himself in the bathroom. I put the blade of the knife under the door and slid it back and forth. He was screaming non-stop and started crying. I eventually stopped after about an hour and let him out. I'm not sure why, but this question made me think back 20 years ago, and I felt extremely satisfied at the thought and thought I would share. On a plane, guy in the seat in front of me, who I'd never met before, starts up a conversation that goes on for too long. At a certain point, he is standing up in the aisle to get closer, continuing to jabber on, while I'm trying to be polite and listen. He continues for so long that the flight attendant asks him to sit down since he is blocking her cart and drink service. He refuses, saying he is talking to his friend, that is, me. At the end of the flight, he asks the flight attendant for her name, which she provides. He then says he's going to report her to airline management and file a complaint about her being rude to customers, that is, him. Shocked flight attendant asks him if she can get his name, saying it's only fair because he has hers. She asks him 1 or 2 times, then drops it when the doucher bag refuses to identify himself. At the end of the flight, as passengers get off the plane, I fumble with my luggage so as not to have to follow the doucher bag immediately off the plane. I find the aggrieved flight attendant and hand her the doucher bag's business card, which he had tried to give me earlier. She seemed relieved. I felt profound satisfaction. One kid, Zach, in my high school spread a lot of shit about how I was jealous of him, his life, and his girlfriend, Emily. I wasn't. He was overweight, broke, and his girlfriend was a plank. Still, it pissed me off. He didn't know that I knew that he said all this crap. I started convincing him that a girl named Brittany liked him. Brittany was the go-to girl for every guy to like in my high school. Every guy wanted Brittany. After about 2 weeks of convincing him, he posts a bulletin on MySpace. This was a long time ago, about how he is unsure of his feelings with Emily and wants to move on. Emily saw this and didn't appreciate it very much. The next day, she confronted him. He told her that he loved her. She said no. They break up. Zach wasn't sad. He still had Brittany. That night, I tell him that I freaked with him this entire time because of what he did to me. He didn't believe me, asked Brittany out, and got rejected. He cried. He went from having 2 girls to 0 in hours. I won. This was in year 7, secondary school. Don't know what that is in America, so pardon me. Polish guy who came to England is being rude, calling names and acting like a general ass about my grandfather being German. My grandfather, I never met him. He died before I was born. Actually wanted to fight against Hitler, was a big game hunter and an awesome zoologist. He said all Germans were Nazis, were evil and stuff like that. We were in German class, where he said stuff about Germany most of the time, and we were chosen to sit next to each other. After insulting me and mocking me in front of the whole class, as we're about to leave I see red and punch him and kick him right in his head and ass. All the popular kids in class laughed and congratulated me. I wasn't very popular and had few friends, so this was great, and I was so happy. Worth the internal exclusion though. Bullied in elementary school, punched in the stomach in the locker room so no visible bruises. Oh, this bully had it down pat. One day after soccer, when he hit me so hard in the head that I saw stars and the coach did nothing. Part of the game I snapped. The field was next to a rolling grassy hill sloping down to the parking lot. So I grabbed the bully's wrist and double suicide leaped off the field. As we rolled down the hill I could feel little satisfying snaps from his arm and hear his little kid screams. So satisfying. Well, since I wasn't as smart in my revenge as the bully was in his abuse, did this in front of a team of witnesses, I got dragged to the principal's office, where I was told only animals behave like that. The bully had to wear a cast and sling, and since he was popular he got plenty of sympathizers to sign it and all that. Doesn't matter. Got revenge. And best of all, he left me alone, although he could now openly call me out as the spaz, and my folks decided it was a good idea for me to switch schools after that year. Well, this bastard of a guy was able to convince my 16-year-old sister to start a family and that her entire family is against her and how them two would end up in a storybook ending. All the while he was freaking around with any chick who would even want to get with him. Well, I waited until the end of the school year, which at the time was my senior year, to strike. I already knew a pretty bad security hole which granted anyone access to everyone's network drives, and I then proceeded to permanently delete all of his finals work just before finals week. I figured it would work, since he was stupid enough to not ever have backups of anything. Oh, that sweet hit of revenge happened when I heard from some people that he ended up getting zeros on all of his finals and the IT guys had no recovery. I couldn't stand this one kid who I went to high school with, who lived a few blocks away in the neighborhood. One night, he sent cops to my parents' house where I was still living, telling them I had done something I didn't do. Luckily I had a receipt in my pocket from the restaurant I was at, in suburb 10 miles away, that was time-stamped half an hour later than when he said the incident occurred. Regardless, my parents were woken up, etc etc. I was pissed. Well, a few days later, my mom bought some plants that she left in the kitchen window. Our family cat was a nutball to begin with, but all of a sudden he was constantly jumping on the counters, eating these plants. When I'd try and shoo him down, he would actually take a defensive stance and hiss and scratch. 10 minutes later, he would be back, chewing on the leaves. I asked my mom what the plants were, and she said, "Oh, they are catnip. They have a really pretty flower. I'm going to plant them in the backyard when the weather warms up." I was like, "Not a chance you're planting these in our backyard. Look what you're doing to the cat. He's an aggressive stoner. You'll bring every cat in the neighborhood, and they will all fight, all night long." Suddenly, at that exact moment, a revenge plot was born. The following night, I snuck into his backyard and planted the catnip everywhere. My friend who lived across the street from him told me it worked perfectly, and that he was always complaining about cats fighting in his backyard after that. Revenge. No physical confrontation, no property damage, just stoned cats. Felt a little like some sort of supervillain, sending out my cat minions to do my dirty work. It was actually against me, if that gives you any clue as to how justified and perfect it was. When I was 4 and my brother was 6, we were on our way to my great-grandfather's funeral. My parents stop at McDonald's, and out of my brother's small fry bag, the 4.5 inches tall white bag of fries, he pulls an 11-inch fry. Impossible, right? We're in the back seat. I see it. He yells to my parents to witness this awesome fry, but before they can turn around I snatch it and eat it. He is upset. Whatever. Cut to 12 years later. Home after school. No parents. Friends hanging out in the kitchen. Everyone is scurrying around for an after-school snack. My brother and I are at the table and our friends are in the other part of the kitchen. Out of this bag of wavy lays I pull a potato chip that is literally the size of my skull. No idea how this thing didn't break in transit. I'm like, oh my god. Guys, look at this chip. Before anyone can even turn their heads, my brother reaches across with his right hand and crushes the chip to crumbs. I have WTF eyes bearing down on him, and he simply says, "That's for the fry." 12 years had passed, and we had never spoken about it, but it took less than a second to remember everything, and just nod in agreement that the score was settled. One enormous potato product for another. True story. When I was about 13 over 14, there was this kid on the school bus who was about a year older than me and used to pick on me a lot. He was a total arrogant shit dick. One time he came and sat next to me and tried to pull the old "hey, did you know if your hand is bigger than your face you have cancer?" Basically the idea is you get the person to then hold their hand right against their face and then you hit their hand, causing them to hit themselves in the face. I wasn't falling for it, so he puts his hand against his own face in order to try and show me what to do. What do? Turn his own prank against him and smack his hand into his face. His nose starts bleeding quite badly. God, that felt good. At my school we had a douchebag who liked to stand next to his locker talking to one of his friends, and when someone got too close to it, he'd slam it open into their face. As there were no cameras near this hallway, it was always dismissed as an accident. Anyways, one day he felt the need to open it into my best friend's face. Gave him a bloody nose and almost broke it. Now, as I'm sure you all would be, I was pissed off. So the day my friend got back, the douche felt the need to approach him to apologize about hitting my friend. Luckily, my locker was located between my friend and the other kid. When I saw I could do it, I casually unlocked my locker, waited for him to get close to it, and slammed it into him. Broke his nose, and dented the locker. Revenge is sweet. I guess it's not really revenge, because I didn't inflict this fate on this person, but this ex-popular girl who bullied me in middle and high school for having a scoliosis brace / being a fugly lesbian came into the credit union I work for to get help for her debts that she couldn't afford to pay back. She was overweight, dressed like a had been B-list porn star, and financially freaked. I straightened my suit, took her into my office, and helped her with consolidation loans. I could tell she wanted me to say something about our past, but I didn't. Sometimes the best vengeance really is living better and showing those people who hurt you that they are just a passing blow. Also, like I said, she was freaked anyway. When I was in junior high, I used to hang out with these dudes during PE class. Then, they turned into douchebags. They started bullying other kids, not participating in any of the activities, etc. I started getting in trouble just by hanging out with them, so I stopped. Of course, I was now a pussy. They would do things like try to push me while running track, gang up on me in sports, etc. Well, one day I opened my lunch to find my dessert missing. This went on 4 days, and I had no idea where it was going. I then saw one of the dudes eating it while laughing at the lunch table and shooting me knowing glances. I could have easily beat this freaker down, but I was never into physical violence. So I thought, and I schemed, and it hit me. The next week, I brought homemade brownies. Mondays were fine. Tuesdays were fine. Wednesdays were fine. Thursdays had a little surprise in them in the form of chocolate laxatives. While he was eating the brownie during lunch, I approached him. I told him I knew he was stealing my desserts and he should stop. "What are you going to do about it?" was his reply to the laughs of his little cronies. I turned around and walked away. We found ourselves in PE class a bit later that afternoon. It was time for calisthenics. Jumping jacks, sit-ups, stretching, and oh my god, what the hell was the scream from a girl a few rows over from me. This kid crapped so much his entire gym shorts were soaked with brown liquid. It was going down his legs. It was filling his shoes. He tried to run out of the gym, but slipped in the shit water and got it all over his body and some on his face. For 2 weeks he didn't come to school. While he was gone, the rumors started. Some said he died. Some said he was shitting blood. None of those were true. He was so freaking embarrassed, and he knew what he was coming back to. This happened in 7th grade. We parted ways after junior high when I went to private high school. However, I heard that the shit incident followed him through high school. No one would hang out with him. He was a social pariah. Now, keep in mind I had no idea it would turn out like that. I figured he would get stomach cramps and diarrhea that night. I had no idea he would end up taking a crap bath in the middle of gym in front of everyone. But I didn't regret it, and still don't. He was a piece of crap that deserved what he got. Not really sure if he suspected me or not. If he did, he never let on.